The fire was discovered shortly before 9 o'clock last night. Several thousand people were inside the building at the time, including a number of wedding groups and one bar mitzvah party. A hostess said she led the youngsters in the bar mitzvah group out through a kitchen door. A busboy sounded the first warning, but sensibly trying to prevent panic, he may not have been emphatic enough about the danger.
Two comedians were performing, and another busboy went up and grabbed a mic from them and told the people that the room was on fire, not to panic and to leave, and they laughed at him. They thought it was part of the act.
Within a minute, however, the diners began smelling smoke. Then they panicked and surged toward the exits, or at least to where they thought the doors were located. Most of the victims died from smoke inhalation. It all happened with incredible speed. All night and all day, relatives, fearing the worst, have gone to a nearby armory to identify their loved ones.
A brief history of the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. It happened in Southgate, Kentucky on Memorial Day weekend, year 1977. As you can see on the bottom right, there remains a memorial site on the land that still has yet to be touched since the cleanup. There was a comedy event going on in the main dining room, in the cabaret room, which held about 1,200 occupants, a total of about 2,600 occupants in the entire complex. The cause, the investigators presumed that it was bad electrical wiring, which happened in the Zebra Room, one of the smaller rooms, eventually spread throughout the complex. And on the bottom left, you'll see Walter Bailey. He was the 18-year-old busboy who essentially served as the fire detection system. He was the one that went up on the microphone and told everyone to evacuate, that there was a fire going on in the building, which is kind of ironic because it was at a comedy event. Everybody thought it was a fluke. Everybody thought it was part of the act. Here are a couple of original photos from the incident in 1977. The top right shows a makeshift morgue set up by fire and EMS personnel just outside of the vicinity of the fire in a local gymnasium. The bottom right shows a bird's eye view of the incident. The bottom left shows a closer look at the fire, and the top left shows the aftermath of the fire. At 11:30 on May 28th, the decision was made to evacuate all fire personnel. The fire was controlled until about 2 a.m. on May 29th, and it wasn't considered extinguished until May 30th. Here are a couple of statistics from the incident. The two things we'd like to highlight are the number of occupants versus the number of exits. As you can see, 26,000 occupants versus 16 exits far exceeds the building code requirements. And the number of casualties, you have 365 casualties with 165 confirmed deaths. That's a 7% casualty rate that could have been mitigated using the proper factors in fire prevention and fire suppression. This slide shows our thesis, which states that the loss of life and property could have been mitigated by the mere presence of fire detection and suppression systems, proper training for employees, and adherence to local codes and regulations, which will all be expanded in depth in the case study. In this slide, you'll see the floor plans of the venue. The left image shows both stories, and the right shows the means of egress of the complex. The fire started in the Zebra Room as depicted by the red arrow, which investigators presumed the cause to be faulty electrical wiring that ignited the wood paneling, carpeting, and other combustible material finishes of the building. The room was unoccupied at the time. The time of ignition was unknown, but the fire was noticed about 20:45 by the employees, and they alerted the manager of the fire immediately. The first customers to become aware of the fire were in the rooms depicted by the green arrows. The smoke eventually flowed through the stairwell upstairs to the room depicted by the blue arrow on the left image. The cabaret room, where the majority of the occupants weren't notified until 21:06 by the young busboy Walter Bailey by means of taking the stage and making an announcement during the comedy event. This was after the fire department was notified at 21:01. The delay and detection of the fire was a significant factor in the resulting casualties.
Prevention, fire code enforcement. The Beverly Hills Supper Club had 18 private party rooms, bars, and the Cabaret nightclub. This was a very large facility, and many additions were made that were added without the thought of fire code and as well as without a Kentucky licensed architect. The night of the concert had enough occupants for the building to need 27 or more exits, while the building only had 16. Many of these exits were hidden behind corridors or multiple doors. This made the building very maze-like and made it difficult for occupants to find exit doors quickly to escape during an emergency. Furthermore, there was more negligence with fire code because the complex did not have any automatic sprinkler protection that was required by both building and fire codes at that time. Also, the interior finish in the corridor exceeded the flame spread allowed by assembly occupancies in the life safety code, and this helped the fire spread so quickly from the zebra room to the cabaret room. Prevention. Proper training of staff. Employees found the fire, and before notifying the guests, they tried to extinguish the fire themselves. The fire had been burning for quite some time already by the time it was found. It is not the employees' fault, though, because the employees were not trained for an emergency or evacuation plan in the event of a fire or any other kind of emergency. But ultimately, it was a very bad choice by management to sell too many tickets for the occupancy limit. The place where the concert was in the cabaret room had almost 3 times the amount of space they could safely accommodate, and the entire facility contained twice the number of occupants that the facility itself could hold. Overall, the fire suppression efforts involved every fire department within Cincinnati and Hamilton County, as well as surrounding counties, with a total of 24 fire departments and a total of 522 firefighters responding to the call. Since there was no sprinkler or standpipe systems, only hose lines and aerial streams were suppressing the fire. This made suppression efforts very difficult and required a lot more firefighters working on suppression, all while there were firefighters working on rescue efforts. Fire suppression. The facility's only protection were portable fire extinguishers, which the employees did try to use. But the building was not equipped with any automatic sprinklers. The firefighters had no standpipe to hook into. The entire complex did not have smoke detection or fire detection, and the entire complex did not have any alarm system. The way the guests found out about the emergency was a busboy had to alert everybody. Sprinkler systems would have helped suppress the fire, and an alarm system would have helped evacuate all the guests. But without all of these in place, it made firefighting much more difficult. Building code changes that resulted from this incident. Following the fire, the next edition of the Life Safety Code came out in 1981. The following changes were made. So for buildings with an occupant load of 300 or more, for the first time, it became a requirement that these type of buildings would have a fire alarm system complete with a voice message form of occupant notification. And for new buildings, occupant load exceeding 300 for the first time were required to have sprinkler systems. Therefore, moving forward, large facilities like the club involved in this fire would have a fire alarm system as well as a sprinkler system.
This concludes our presentation. Just having a plan in place with use of fire detection and suppression systems and just following the local codes and regulations could have mitigated the amount of life lost and the amount of property damage done during the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire and any incident for that matter.